Hello, everybody, and welcome to the sharpest college football podcast brought to you by LeanTossup. My name is Robert, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, BuckMetrics. How are you doing tonight on this first of Maction week?
Thank you for reminding me. I didn't open that. I was going to go with I'm lonely because I got zero trick-or-treaters yesterday. Even though we
Aw.
carved a couple pumpkins, I bought like a 36 pack of like the really nice sized candy bars, not the small cheap ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I wound up giving all the candy bars to the people who work at my favorite restaurant today at lunch. So they
There
were
you go.
delighted. Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know. Maybe I'll get like an extra big coleslaw next time I dine there. We'll see.
maybe. Yeah, yeah, very. So I think probably a little bit of a different issue than you had where you are. But during Halloween night, there was a little bit of snow here. So yeah, I don't think you had snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Very safe bet.
yeah, so as a fun proxy, MAC stands for Midwestern Athletic Conference, and fun fact, I'm functionally in the Midwest. So if you're looking at a MAC broadcast and it's snowing there, it might be snowing where I am too. So yeah, so
Oh my
now
God.
it wasn't heavy like because they in the MAC games they had to like bring out the stuff to like push the snow off. It wasn't that bad, which is weird because I'm more north than all the MAC schools. But with the exception of Buffalo. But no, there was a very, very light dusting of snow, but it was also very, very cold too. So we had a couple less trick or treaters there. So, but yeah, it was a very, very cold night here in Canada. But yeah, but
Yeah.
either way, we went. I had a pretty good night with some of my Mac bets last night, so I was happy for that.
Yeah, we might have been on the different sides of maybe one of them. Then I can tell you that I don't know if you're familiar with Santa Ana winds. Do you know what the Santa Ana winds are?
No.
Those are the ones that basically come off the Rocky Mountains to here, so they're hot and dry. So it was in the 80s today here. So yeah, no max snowstorm here.
Hmm.
Boy, that looked crazy in the first half of that Central Michigan game last night. That was just
Oh, it was
nuts.
yeah, just like massive like wads of snow coming down. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think that's called a light dusting. I don't know. I'm not a snow expert, but that didn't
No,
seem to be
that
a
is
light dusting.
Yeah, that is not a light dusting of snow. No, that's the very heavy snow. We didn't have that, but we had a little bit of snow though. But
Okay. Should we get into it? Week 9?
yeah, let's get into who won and who lost the week here.
Okay. Mine's pretty simple, man. Kansas.
Yeah.
Really no surprise here. And this is funny. This was, we both said in last week's preview, hey, this line it kind of had the line that stinks out loud feel to it. And I said counterintuitively, the more this line goes down towards Kansas, the more you kind of want to bet Kansas, and it turned out to be correct. I don't know exactly what Oklahoma did. We'll get into them in a second, but in the Big 12 preview, I got actually angry when I was talking about the season win total for Kansas was 6, and then you, me, and Brandon, Big 12 Mafia, talked ourselves into playing Kansas. I'm thinking as a BYU alum, Brandon probably didn't jump on that action like we did, but that looked like the Kansas that I was expecting this season. So nice that they beat an undefeated team. They got on the national radar. They were the big noon kickoff game. That was awesome. The other thing that was really cool about that was they lost the lead and regained it 3 times, including one like after a weather break, which really, if you're watching the game, really, really felt like, okay. Or Oklahoma was making its first comeback, and it just felt like, yeah, Kansas had a nice little 10-minute run there, and it's about over. But they just kept on counterpunching. And again, they did this with Jason Bean at quarterback. I mean, he's better, but he's clearly not a starter. He's probably like about the best you want your backup quarterback to be. So all credit to Lance Leipold. As a big fan whose team is going into the Big 10 next season, I am hoping desperately that Lance stays in the Big 12 and enjoys the rest of his coaching career in Lawrence, Kansas. So that's my winner.
Mhm. Yeah, no, shout out to them. I didn't play this one, although I should have. The last 2 weeks, my model has absolutely nailed what's happened in Oklahoma games, even though I don't believe it. Like the week before with UCF, it was like I've got this tied. I'm like, that's impossible. And sure enough, can't like Oklahoma won by like 3 over UCF, and then this week I had like Kansas -10. I'm like, no, there's no way that could be right, and they actually won by like 8 points. So I got to start believing what my model says about Oklahoma games here. Now, actually, so a little preview of this week, it actually has Oklahoma State as favorite. So okay, I've already bet that one. So I'm in with the model. Like the model says, Oklahoma State is good, Kansas isn't. So we'll talk a bit about Oklahoma State later. But yeah, no, like huge win there for Kansas. I think there is, depending on what happens, they're gonna need some help, but there is a path for them to get to the Big 12 championship game. They have to
Mm-hmm.
beat
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State this week, which they can do, but Iowa State isn't a fun team. You don't want to play against Iowa State.
No.
And then they're going to need Kansas State to beat Texas, and then they're also going to need Oklahoma State to beat Oklahoma. But if those happen, which I think are actually they're not unlikely. They're not the most likely, but they're not unlikely to happen. Kansas is going to the Big 12 championship game, and we've got
Mm-hmm.
Kansas 40-1
Yeah.
to win the Big 12. So, and I also have them at, I think, 12-1 to make the Big 12 final, like the Big 12 championship game. So, those are actually, although it didn't seem like it, those are actually very much alive. So, I'm pretty excited for hopefully maybe there's a chance of that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, you and I both. Let's keep our fingers crossed here. You're staying in
yeah,
the Big 12 with yours, huh?
yeah, I am too. I mean, the thing is, this is weird because outside of I think Kansas and stuff, most of the things that like there wasn't a ton. There was one upset, and I'll talk about that later. But everything else pretty much went according to plan. Like there wasn't no like, oh man, this was a really big upset week. Like no, that was 2 weeks ago. This one was everything mostly went according to plan. But like Oklahoma State, like again, we have knocked on Oklahoma State a lot in the last couple of years. Specifically, Spencer Sanders, he's no longer with the team, and people were like, "Oh, this could be a down year." They lost him, and we're like, "I don't think that's really a bad thing." And sure enough, that may not actually have been that bad of a thing because they
Yeah.
finally found a starter now, and he's doing pretty well. Like this Oklahoma State team is back to where we roughly expect Oklahoma State to be, and like they could be a really, really good team. I think they're very, very underlooked. I mean, the spread I think was 7 against who they play, either UCF or no West Virginia. They played West Virginia. The spread was like 7, and it was close early on, but then Oklahoma just pulled away. I think it was like 34-10 or something. The final it was some they didn't the spread wasn't even close. I mean, I originally had Oklahoma State in a teaser. That teaser cashed, and then I'm like, let's throw something on the spread, and then that also just easily cashed too. So I'm like, okay, this is going pretty well today. So yeah, no, like this team is really good, and again, they're playing Oklahoma this week. My model has them actually favored against Oklahoma. I think they could do it, and they could. I mean, again, the thing is when you talk about Oklahoma State, and to a lesser extent, well, this kind of applies to this doesn't like when you're talking about Oklahoma and Texas going to the Big 12. Um, Obviously, Texas's main rival that was remaining in the Big 12 was Oklahoma. Their other rival, Texas A&M, was already in the SEC, so that really doesn't apply to that specific rivalry. But Oklahoma State loses their main rival. This is the rival that they play every year, and this is their main rival. And then when Oklahoma left the SEC, they basically said, "Screw you, OSU. We're done. We don't care about you anymore. We're moving on." This is their potentially last chance for revenge here. They may not get a chance to play Oklahoma State for quite a while now. There's not, as far as I know, there's nothing on the schedule for them to play going forward. So this could be their last. This is kind of like again we said a couple weeks ago, Houston versus Texas. That was Houston's last shot. They came up short, but they
Yep.
definitely covered the 20 some odd point spread. Oklahoma State can actually win this game, so watch out for Oklahoma State to actually win this week and get some revenge on Oklahoma before they head off to the SEC.
Yeah, I've really been a big fan of how Iowa State has turned their season around, and Oklahoma State just I don't want to say they made them look bad, but they made Iowa State not look like themselves. I'll put it that way. That was a few weeks ago. All right, who lost the week? I've got these two programs that just kind of, in a bad way, did their throwback Saturdays. Maryland, as as our buddy Isaiah pointed out. Yep, it's October, Maryland. I kind of thought it was going to be a little different, and that ugly loss to Northwestern, you just can't do that. I mean, I don't know. I saw something stupid that asked Hayes Loxley on the hot seat. It's like, come on, you're Maryland. No, but that's just got to be frustrating if you're a Maryland fan. Although, yet at the same time, all too familiar and not surprising. It just, maybe the venue's a little surprising. I think maybe those fans had expected it. And Oklahoma, the giving up three different leads, and giving up that many points to a backup quarterback, that's got to be the worst. Just considering how delighted they were to have Brent Venables replace Lincoln Riley and get a more physical team. And last season they were kind of, they spent 13 weeks just vomiting out their, the worst of Lincoln Riley, and they looked like they had a totally different, team, especially on defense this year. And just to revert to that has got to really, really sting, especially for. I know that Twitter isn't emblematic of every fan and an entire fan bases, but man, those guys chirp a lot at USC, and for good reason. But just to have that after they've been, tripping that hard about how weak USC's defense is, that's got to be a real bitter pill for them to swallow in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and this is the point, right? Because we talk about like people were like, okay, Oklahoma, they finally got this. This is finally their year. They beat Texas. They're favorites to win the Big 12 championship. They're on the right path to go to the college football playoff, and then they stumble against UCF, and then they outright lose there against Kansas. It's just like this is. Now, to be fair, this is also kind of the Oklahoma we've expected, right? There's been a couple times, even back to Lincoln Riley, where they did well and they dominated the year. And then now, but the thing is, it was always the end of the year. It was always after Red River. They started fading a little bit. They had played games that were closer. Sometimes they'd even lose one of those games. Usually that would either be Iowa State or Oklahoma State. Usually not Kansas, but whatever. There usually was a game they got caught in later on in the season. There'd always be that randomly like. Usually they were bigger favorites than that. Usually it was like 27-point favorites, and then they'd lose it randomly or something. But now that's kind of back to Oklahoma of old, and I think they got a little bit complacent there. And I think if you're Oklahoma, I think that's a big problem going forward. And I think the thing is, this was supposed to be the year, right? And you're in the Big Ten, still in the Big 12 right now. You're in the SEC. Again, there's no division, but that schedule gets exponentially harder, right? Mm-hmm. That game that you're going to be bad against isn't against Kansas anymore. That's going to be against a team full of 5-stars and 4-star recruits now, right?
Yeah.
And that's where this gets exponentially harder. So if you're Oklahoma, you got to figure out why it is that you can't pull away in these games at the end of the year. Like, why is it that you're struggling here? And now you've got to win out and then win the Big 12 championship game. And now it's not guaranteed, because now you're looking at the part where you have potentially an undefeated SEC champion. I'm still iffy on that. We'll have to see. But you're also going to have basically you could theoretically have an undefeated Pac-12 champion. You're probably going to, there's a decent chance you're going to have an undefeated Big Ten champion. And the question is, where is that going to fit in, right? It's very clear one of the 5 power conferences is going to be left out, right? So we got to figure, like, if you're now Oklahoma, you have now basically just said, sure, leave us out of. We don't want to go to the college football playoff anymore. You take our invite now, right? Like, that's what you've functionally done, right? If the conversation was going to be between you and like FSU, and you would have been like, cool, we've beaten Texas twice. Well, FSU now has that because they've beaten LSU, and they may have like. This is the thing. So this loss potentially, unless something happens to FSU, this may have eliminated the Big 12 from the college football playoff, possibly. Right, so now again, it's the last year for this format, which thank God, because this is really annoying that we're gonna have to whittle this down to 4 teams this year. But man, though, like, just not a fun way for this to end. I think they're like this is a huge loss for Oklahoma and for Maryland. I think there is an argument that Mike Loxley might actually be the problem here, right? I mean, this team has had potential for a couple of years here, and these have been disappointing seasons. These are kind of like on the scale of, it's not the same scale as Penn State, but there was more expected from some of these teams, and they've played some close games against Michigan and Ohio State, and they just haven't been able to get the job done. And there's actually I'd be supportive of the argument that if that wasn't Mike Locksley, maybe they could have won some of those games. So I mean, they're not going to fire Mike Locksley because it's Maryland, but like maybe they should, right? And the thing is, let's see what happens next year when he doesn't have Tagovailoa. What happens then? What happens when you like? Does he go like 4-8? Is that what happens next year?
A couple things. Working backwards, the thing with Locksley is, yeah, Maryland does have potential, but I think it's because Locksley brings them potential that no other coach really has brought to them as a program. He's a great recruiter, especially in that area. I don't know how creative, any other coach would be at that spot. Unless you're going to, I don't know, you're going to go irrational fan path and say, well, hey, Urban Meyer's available. We can get him. Realistically, I don't know how much better they can do. It's Maryland. It's Maryland. Come on. It's not like this is, a team with an awesome history. The other, going back to OU and the situation that they find themselves in, they've got probably about the worst setup in that of their last 4 scheduled games, they have 3 teams that are unranked and really no threat to be ranked in West Virginia, BYU, and TCU. And then they have Oklahoma State, which is kind of a thankless matchup because Oklahoma State is 22nd. So you win that, you probably knock them out of the top 25, and you basically, undo what any kind of credit you would have gotten for beating them just by virtue of beating them. It's there's not a lot of space for them to show up. I think what they need to do is just, have things fall right. So they do make the title game and just, have an emphatic win in that, no squeaking by Kansas State, for example. Or, you explained to me how you don't get credit for beating the same team twice, which kind of makes my head explode, but I guess that you don't want that. I don't know. All right.
Yeah,
Let's go to you here. All right. Oh boy.
yeah,
Yeah. Here's a surprise.
yeah. I tried to I tried to have the Ram or Tar Heel, as apparently they're called, pointing to the box score. And it's close, but it's good enough. Yeah. They let over like 600. They let Georgia Tech go over 600 yards. The Tar Heels, North Carolina. What? How? What are you? You let Haynes King have 4 passing touchdowns, and then you let them run for 348 yards. What? How? Like, this was the defense that was amazing early on in the year, and this is a Georgia Tech team that lost to a Bowling Green team that's currently basically a score ahead of Ball State here, and they lost to that team pretty handily too. And you let them have over 600 yards of offense against you. What? Like, this is a team that, okay, yeah, they lost to Virginia, which, like, okay, fine, you want to say that's the one weird game of the year where they lose, sure, fine, whatever. And then they did it again. Then they're like, yeah, let's just do that 2 weeks in a row now. Let's just also lose to Georgia Tech for no reason. Like, this team, man, like, and again, this is, and again, I did it to myself, right? I'm like, can't bet on Drake May to win the Heisman because the defense is going to let him down. And then I mid season, I'm like, you know what? Maybe the defense is, and then they just stab me right in the back. The defense is like, nope, he's not going to win the Heisman. Like, you can't do this. I don't understand how this even happened. I wasn't watching this game. I saw North Carolina kept scoring, and then Georgia Tech kept coming back. I'm like, okay, at some point they got to stop them, and they just did not stop them. No, they just kept scoring. I'm like, this is the problem. And you know what the thing is? We are seeing some weaknesses from USC and even some weaknesses from Caleb Williams. If they were winning these games, like, there's a chance that Drake May might be number 1 overall, right? Favorite to be, like, or co-favorite to be number 1 overall right now. But because USC apparently scrapes out a 2-point win against Cal, apparently that means he's going to be number 1 drafted. But because they give up, the Georgia Tech's defense gives up 600 yards to, or North Carolina gives up 600 yards to Georgia Tech, apparently that means that Caleb Williams still goes, like, it's ridiculous. And Caleb Williams, again, throwing for over 300 yards. Like, he's doing his part. You just can't give up 348 yards on the ground to a Georgia Tech team. It's just, yeah, it's frustrating. I don't understand what's happening. So, yeah.
It's interesting, although, in part 2, there's a little more data on this, but yeah, 600 yards to anybody is really bad. I don't know. It's and on the right on the back of that Virginia game. I don't know. Maybe those signs are coming with increasing frequency, where the blips are coming in closer to each other, and maybe this is the signs, start of the signs that it's time for Mac to retire. I don't know. That's two bad ones right back to back.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah.
All right, victory laps. I just updated this because, hey, guess what? He did it again. um, Radzinski just took the same defense on the road for the second straight week and just moved to Miami and just made Van Dyke look like inept. Look at this. Again, same thing. Van Dyke in his first three home games, and then what he did against Virginia. He 9.8 versus 5.4. 5.4 is Tony Muskett territory. And then he had an apex of 11 for the game, and he had an apex of 141 for the three prior home games. I mean, I don't know. Rinse and repeat. This guy is good. I still don't hear anybody talking about him. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe I need to drive up to LA. It's what, about 40 miles, so it's about 2 hours for me. I don't know. Maybe if I go at 3 a.m, I can get there at a reasonable hour. Just wait for the athletic director and say, "Hey, this is the guy that you want," because he clearly, I mean, I don't know. These aren't two stiffs. I mean, Van Dyke was having a great season. And I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he ruined Drake May, and then he's ruined Van Dyke, and maybe that's something to keep an eye on. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a bad game. That's hard to recover from.
Yeah, somehow Miami won this game. I just assumed, like, late in the fourth, I just assumed they were going to lose the game because that's what always
No.
happens with Miami when it's like, oh, they're playing a close game. That's it. There's no, like, clutch factor. But somehow, I mean, now to be fair, they did win overtime by a field goal, which means something bad happened. But that's, they somehow pulled out the win. So shout out to them. But their season's over anyways because they lost to
North
Florida State,
Carolina.
North Carolina, and someone else. And Pitt? No, they have a second loss.
I think it's Florida State. They've already played Florida State.
Yeah, they played Florida State. Yeah, it's someone.
Yeah.
It's someone bad. So and they lost them, but they beat Clemson with their backup quarterback. I love this sport. The sport's great. But anyways,
Yeah.
no, but yeah, no, this guy's really good, and I mean the fact that he's got Virginia in positions to win these games is kind of nuts. So, I mean, I think Virginia actually, yeah, I think Virginia's either close to or mathematically eliminated from going to a bowl game. I think, which is a little sad for them because they did have a kind of up and down season, but they've done well in the last couple of weeks. So, like
Yeah,
really
they've
well.
improved. It's weird. The ACC as a whole has kind of improved a lot this season. I'm looking right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're 2-6, so they got to win out. Like Virginia Tech is better this season. Wasn't expecting that. So, all right, and I just wanted to revisit this. I already brought this up before, and I'm just kind of updating that stupid quote that Sark made about, "Hey, we ran the ball after Alabama. He was all chesty. We ran the ball when everybody knew that we were going to run the ball because we're big bad Texas." So in their last three games, I kind of was exchanging some tweets with a Texas fan. He said, "Man, I didn't really realize this." He just said, "We suck in the red zone." So I took a look and I basically spanned it out to series, not drives, but series that started within the 12-yard line in their last three games. 9 series, they only have 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and they only are getting 1.6 yards per play. What happened to the big physical? We're going to run it when we're going to run it. We're going to shove it down your throat. That seems to be a distant history. They just skated by that Houston team a couple weeks ago. BYU at home is a different animal, but I think they've got at least one more stinker. They're not really ascending at this point, and just I I don't know. This is not encouraging if I'm a Texas fan. It is if
They've
I'm an
got
Oklahoma fan and I'm looking at playing
yeah,
them again.
they've got Kansas State this weekend. So
Yeah,
there is your potential. They've got Kansas State, and they have to travel to Iowa State. and they've got
Yep.
Texas Tech in. I think they play. I'm fairly sure if I remember correctly, they play the Friday of Black Friday, or they play the Friday of Thanksgiving, if I remember correctly. That's usually when they play their rivalry games. So it's yeah, they've got some potential ones. Those are three that if you play bad, you could lose those games. So like Texas is by far not a lock for the college football playoff or even the Big 12 championship game at this point. They have many ways they could still blow this, and because it's Texas, they will. So there's many times. So don't worry about this. And it's funny because last week I was like 100%. I'm like, oh, Texas is going to destroy BYU, and I bet them. I bet them minus. I think it was either 16 and a half or 17 or 17, one of those three.
I think we grabbed it
And
under 17, and it
yeah, I think it was
closed
just under 17
closer
or
to
17 on the
closer to
dot. Yeah.
20.
Well, I grabbed it somewhere around there, and then it was announced that it wasn't Quint Ewers going to start. It was going to be the backup quarterback Malik Murphy. And then I was like, oh no, have I made a mistake? And then the line moved in favor of Texas. The line
Yeah.
like went towards Texas, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then they just crushed them. Now I think it was a little close. If BYU scored, then it was going to be like, but I think it was,
No,
or no, I think
it,
they
it
covered by a
shouldn't have
couple
been
of
that
scores.
close. It should not have been
Yeah,
that close because these last three here were from that game. They actually left about 14 points on the board because
yeah,
they can't put it in the freaking end zone from like the two
exactly.
yard
So,
line. Yeah,
but
it
again,
should have been a bigger blowout.
that's true. Yeah. So again, the thing is it's like we've even I said last week they should have beaten BYU, and they did cover, and that's fine. But now I'm like, okay, and now they're going to be there. I think I have the Kansas game as less than a score. I think I have it as 6, but the spread's 4.5. But I'll still take Kansas State there anyways. There is a lot of like this could go bad energy here. I think. I think,
Yes.
and Kansas State traveling to Iowa State, like watch out for that. That Iowa State team is also sneakily okay as well. Um, there's bad things that can happen for this Texas team. So do not if I've got the under 10.5 and I've got the under 9.5, and I am not worried. I'm just totally fine. Uh, Looked bad there for a moment, just for a week there. I think like week 4, week 5, I was like, oh. Well, I was like, I wasn't really that. I was like, yeah, this isn't good, but we're gonna be okay, guys. We're gonna be okay.
Yeah, the this could go bad energy is called your coach is Steve Sarkisian. That kind of goes with it. All right, the other victory lap. I just you know, I don't know. This is kind of an homage to that guy that told us our numbers are off from the line, so toss your model. I don't know what the market is seeing with UCLA. I don't know if they just don't get that their defense is good. This was like so clearly the under here was never in doubt when they played Colorado. UCLA left some points on the board, but I mean, it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. I think that the total at final was like 40 something was the final score. I don't get it. Am I saying I'm smarter than the market? In this case, yeah. I don't know I don't, it seems like people that were betting it here when it opened at 64, when it closed at 60, I don't know what they're seeing. Are they stuck like in week 2 when Shador Sanders is throwing for 500 yards and, Travis Hunter's taking 1,000 snaps? I don't know. So I'm going to pat myself on the back on this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What we missed. Boy, this one hurts. This is not fun. Arizona is actually has a decent defense, and I've been crapping on this guy for a year and a half now, and I got to say I can't say he's doing a good job. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. This guy was just an average linebacker coach, and he's coached at like most of the Pac-12 schools because nobody wanted to keep him for too long because he's a good recruiter and he's not a good position coach. But Johnny Nanson's defense is right there with Cal, and it's what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in the conference. I don't get it. If it wasn't my own numbers, I would poo-poo the notion. But congratulations to him. Arizona is, they probably should be ranked. They gave USC a nightmare of a game. Weirdly, that's aging. That overtime win is aging surprisingly and oddly well for USC At the
Mhm.
time, it seemed like it seemed like the end of the world for USC, and still things aren't great. But I, I don't know. Congratulations, Arizona. Your defense is better than USC's. That's not saying a lot, but it's working out there. Now we'll see. They have UCLA at Colorado. Then they have that game where they host Utah. And remember, I chose that as my upset in the Pac-12 season. I just thought Utah's going to have that's their exhale game. Utah's got a crazy stretch that they're in the middle of. But gosh, look at their losses. Overtime at Mississippi State, that's not great. But then they actually, they played Washington to the touchdown and took USC to, I think that was double overtime. Yeah, it was double or triple overtime. And that's it. It's there's not really a lot of holes to poke on their resume. Not saying they should be top 10, but they're not bad from being not far from being like a top 25 team.
Mhm.
I didn't calculate Fafita's their new quarterback, his apex. I'd be kind of curious about that. He's been very efficient, and he's not as volatile as Delora, who's had a proclivity to be all over the map.
Yeah, he's actually really good. I was on Arizona this week against Oregon State. I had them, I think, plus 3.5. I think I forgot to bet them. I forgot I liked them, but then the spread got down to like 2.5, and I didn't like to take that. But then live, I was able to get the 3.5 and the money line. I took that, and then I got it like just when Arizona started pulling ahead, and it was great. So I that was a really good.
Nice.
That was a really good live bet. Sometimes you get some really good live bets, honestly. So I was pretty happy with that one. Uh, but yeah, no, it's yeah, Arizona. Like again, next year in this Big 12, like I have no idea what's gonna happen. This is just gonna be a mess. I like Arizona could be good. Arizona State could be good. If Colorado is able to basically get any sort of defensive player, they could be really good too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like there's a and again you can't even you have Kansas in the Big 12 as well. You're gonna have a BYU team that's gonna restock. You're gonna have like there's gonna be a lot and Oklahoma State. You're gonna have a lot of teams that could potentially be very good next year in that massive Big 12. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with that. It's going to be, I think it's going to be like a meat grinder of a schedule. I think it's going to be kind of
Yep.
similar to what it's going to be, I think, honestly, I feel like the Pac 12, the whole like, we're going to cannibalize our conference champion, I feel like that's going to become the Big
Yeah.
12. And I
Yep.
feel like, now they also took on a lot of Pac 12 teams, so I feel like that's just, it's like an STD, I guess, or
It's
something. But like that's yeah, like it's just they're inheriting that disease, I guess. But yeah, that's what's going to happen, and you can see it coming. But the thing is, even if that happens, it's going to still be really fun. So yay, that's cool. So
no, it's going to be great unless you're in the conference because it's going to be great for us because it's going to be a very competitive conference. But I think they will by far have the most two lost champs of any conference. Just it'll be
Mhm.
kind of just their matter of course for them. All right. This has been a long time coming. And I'm not exactly breaking news by saying Alex Grinch just sucks. It's just he's got so much better talent this year than last year, and it's actually statistically lining up as worse now. I just put this grid together, just showing USC's opponents this season. What did they do in yards per play versus USC, and what have they done versus everybody else? Um, Great, good job against Notre Dame. This is almost like a kind of like a well, he gets the Narduzzi award because that is the Narduzzi thing where our guy Narduzzi, he, pretty handily beats a Louisville team that just came off of a win over Notre Dame, just to kind of show like how bad he's doing in all the other games. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing in that Notre Dame game. And the real alarming thing is there's no improvement. The two worst games I basically highlighted at the bottom. It's their last two games, but against Utah and California. And just I don't know. It's gonna get the schedule gets a lot tougher. So it could get really, really ugly. The good news is that game at Cal, which lasted like 4.5 hours because of protests at the beginning of the game, and then like the halftime was like 40 minutes. I don't know if you had caught that.
yeah, it
They
was really long. Yeah,
they started halftime, but then there was a coach's challenge that was upheld. So USC got, when they came back from the halftime break, they got a field goal attempt with 1 second left, and of course they missed. And then the kicker missed the extra point on the touchdown that they scored since. It's just, oh no, it's been an awesome year to be a USC fan, in big part thanks to my Narduzzi Award winner for this week. Hopefully, just to kind of go back, hopefully we see this guy in Los Angeles next season. If anybody there's
Mhm.
smart enough to figure that out.
I will say that with this chart here, it's really good. It's really illustrative here because it's just showing you that they are not stopping them at all, right? It's like you are basically doing what you do, what you've been able to average all year, which is, by the way, thrown into those averages are games against non-Power Five teams, FCS teams. You're like, that's your average of what you're doing, and we're going to keep you to that exact average, and in some cases even worse. It just
Yeah.
shows you that there like the best teams will hold you to a lower average. They'll be like, yeah, whatever. We're just gonna like hold you to whatever average you've had all year. That's not how defense is supposed to work. It's supposed to prevent offense, not be like enable it. So, um, you're yeah, this has been a big problem, and he's been fired now, right? Or
No,
no? I thought
don't
he
get
was
people's
fired.
hopes up. No, you're
No?
thinking
Oh,
of
okay.
another inept assistant who's not
No,
not
no,
really on the resume,
no. I thought
or
it
on
was.
the
Yeah,
no.
I thought it was someone. Okay, maybe he's on the hot seat then or something. But yeah, I
I,
thought
I I would be a lot more upbeat and less cranky were I doing this slide if that was the case.
true, yeah. But no, it was, yeah, a 50-48 is, I mean, on one hand, it's terrifying that you could put up 50, but on the other hand, it's terrifying that you can let in 48. Um, so
Yeah,
it's
it's like
kind of a,
how
yeah,
that
it's
that
kind of
was
a
like
mixed
that guy's
bag.
like his like third career start or something. I'm just gonna make sure. I'm just gonna check Twitter. Just make sure that I'm not missing anything on Alex Grinch here. Um, no, it's just more like, why is this guy still employed? How does he have a job? What does he do? Um, asking Mark Davis to fire Alex Grinch. Also, this is pretty good. Actually, just gonna go to the
Yeah,
latest stuff on Twitter about.
yeah.
There's a fake
Twitter,
Alex Grinch account. There's a fire Alex Grinch account. Um,
oh, okay.
yeah,
That's,
this is. I might just do this daily if I'm in a bad mood. Just kind of cheer myself up. Just search for Alex Grinch and see the goofy stuff that comes up.
I mean, it's really bad. Like, I don't understand how, like, I mean, to be fair, I guess on some level, okay, you fire the defensive coordinator. Okay, who's your defensive coordinator then? I mean, it shows
Yeah,
there's probably a lack of confidence in everybody. Like you can't just like Amazon Prime a defensive coordinator.
somebody made a good point. I can kind of get not firing him after last season because there was very little talent, but somebody made a really good point. It's like, yeah, you knew you had a shaky DC. That's on Riley for not bringing in an assistant that could swing into the position if you were going to fire him, and that's a great point. So I don't know. I'll just cheer myself up by checking Twitter and searching for Alex Grinch and see what comes up.
Fair, yeah.
So is
Here
this
we
a
go.
WWE wrestler here? I don't know who this is.
This is the head coach of Sam Houston State. Actually, this picture is amazing.
It
He's just
is.
like, why am I getting this award? No, it's. I mean, this team is 0-8 now, and you know what? Here's the thing. We talked about Sam Houston State at the beginning of the year, and we said like, okay, this is going to be tough sledding for this team. This was, I mean, and he's won FCS national championship, so again, that's fine. But the last couple weeks have kind of been inexcusable here, and yes, they need to restock on talent, and they probably will, and maybe this guy might be a fine FBS coach. That's fine. But like the last 2 weeks, they've been favorites of 5.5 points and 3.5 points against FIU, who is 3-4 when they played them, and then UTEP, which was 2-6 when they played them, and they've been 5.5 and 3.5 favorites against both those teams, and they lost both of those games outright, and I believe had leads in all those games at many points as well. Uh, they had a what? They had a 20-17 lead with a minute left in the fourth. Or no, sorry, a bit more than that. They had like with like basically 2 minutes left in the fourth. They had a 3-point lead against FIU, and then they had at one point they were leading 27-13 in the middle of the fourth quarter, and then they somehow lost the game. They just stopped. They basically stopped being aggressive. They just said, okay, fine, you're going to give us. We'll just kick a bunch of field goals, and then basically they kicked a field goal from the 4 yard line, which everybody knew was like, okay, you don't do that. Like this is the problem, right? Like, okay, you got 3 points, congratulations. And to be fair, you are up, and I think that made it a 3 score game. Okay, this is UTEP. If you run it, say you do a run play, and say you don't get the touchdown, say you get 3 yards. Okay, oh no, UTEP has the ball on their 1 or 2 yard line. There's like what, a 40% chance there's about to be a safety, maybe like another 30% chance that there's going to be a kick from their own end zone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you afraid of? It's UTEP. They're 2-6. Like, make them start a drive on their 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 yard. Who cares? Let them try it. Let them do it. Like, what does the 3 points get you? And then sure enough, they lose by a game winning field goal, 37-34, right? Like, you've got to have more aggression here. And I think in FCS, it's a lot higher scoring. So I think, and to be fair, you're a bit snake bit because you've lost the last couple of weeks. I understand that. But at the same time, you're not going to win games this way. You have to win games by actually winning a game. You have to go and score points and be aggressive on this stuff. You can't let up on aggression just because you want to play it safe and get that win. Like, I guarantee you the thought process was, we're 0-7, just kick a field goal, we'll be fine. Just kick a field goal, we'll be fine. We keep eyeing on field goals. It's UTEP. Our defense will stop them, but it didn't work. So this is like, this guy might be okay, but like straight up, like the last 2 weeks, especially last week, just the non aggression factor against UTEP. Like, it's UTEP. Just like, go for it. Put your foot on their throats and just end the game. But they just didn't. So then they're 0-8.
Yeah, a few things. It's weird because they do have a championship pedigree. They won in that, I think it's 2021 in that spring season. They won the FCS championship that season, and it's weird how that just has not translated over. This is what's crazy. It's not like they're outmanned. If you look at Air Force's schedule this year, their closest game was a 7 point win over Wyoming. Their second closest game was a 10 point win over Sam Houston. Look at Liberty. Their closest game this season was a 5 point win over Sam Houston. Their next closest game was a 7 point win over Middle Tennessee. So they've been a tough out. They've just been an inevitable tough out, it seems like, for good teams. I mean, those teams are both undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't go past this one too without mentioning just the awesome early season memories that this team gave us, where my model actually had them scoring like -4 points, I think, in week 5 because their offense was so bad. They've cured that and they're actually on the plus side of 0 now. But I've never seen that before, but that was awesome. That'll go in the annals, and that'll be forever my first impression of Sam Houston State.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
All right. Noted for future reference. So other news and notes from last week. Just updating. These are all following up on stuff that we talked about before. K Klubnik Apex is down to a 75, and man, Team Ryan is 88th. GGAB is 81st for Clemson. Just it's brutal. We'll get to Clemson more in a second, but man, that offense is just horrible. Following up again on This Is Not Your Father's App State team. Over a month ago, they barely beaten ULM 41-40. They actually trailed Southern Miss. Southern Miss, who was like one of the bottom 5 teams in all of FBS. They trailed by 10 before winning 48-38. Now the problem is you gave up 38 points to Southern Miss, who's just, you remember Billy Wiles, who I would never ever had heard of, were it not for the bum list, and he's just been kind of like a charter member this season. Jordan McLeod, James Madison quarterback, 104 Apex versus Old Dominion, 129 for the season, and he's still undefeated as a starter. And then we have the great Cade McConnell roller coaster. He continues the up and down. 321 Apex in his debut at FIU. Then he followed up with a 67 Apex. something a little more within the range of reasonable with a 130 at Sam Houston State. We might be approaching like a normalization of his performance.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will say about a Southern Miss is the fact that, like, 2 weeks ago they played South Alabama. South Alabama absolutely annihilated them. I had the minus 16.5. It was like, I mean, okay, maybe at first they weren't. South Alabama can't score 17 points
Yeah,
initially, but like literally minutes of the game, I'm like, we're good, we're good. That bet has won now. This game, they were, I think, equally 16.5 point favorites, and they won by 10. And they were losing. Like this is a problem. Like this App State team is not good. Like this game should not have been this close, and it shows you how far behind App State is to other teams.
yeah.
Because South Alabama crushed them, and then they're that far behind South Alabama. And South Alabama this week, they got crushed by University of
By
Louisiana.
Louisiana, yeah.
Yeah, the Raging Cajuns. So they got crushed by that team, and like by transitive property, App State's in big trouble. So yeah, that's not good. That is not good at all. Also, Old Dominion's just good. It was so weird. My model had this game as close, and like the spread was like 20. I'm like, no, that can't be right. So I didn't touch it. I should have touched it. I should have put Old Dominion plus 20. I think people. Now the problem is the people in the AP and the CFP are going to be like, well, see, they're not that good. They almost lost to Old Dominion. Well, actually, Old Dominion's actually good, so they're okay, right? So that's not actually a bad loss, or it's actually not a bad win. It's actually Old Dominion's actually just good. So, um, but yeah, that's what I thought on there. And I think with Clemson, I think Dabo's given up play calling. I think, or was that last week? I can't remember.
I we got more for on him in just a second.
Oh, okay, I wonder if we're going to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the new items. You know, Penn State. What a horrible effort. That just seemed like another hangover. It just seems like they never just lose one game. They kind of lose the next games, or at least a half. What just that was just such a no show. It was just unreal.
They tried to
Um,
lose that game,
they really
but
did, and then
because it's Indiana, it didn't work.
Indiana just is more familiar with how to not win a game like that.
Well, Indiana's tanking for a better draft pick next year, so
I think so. Yeah, clearly.
the thing is, it's so funny because I can't remember where it was on the field, but I think Indiana had like a 4th and 2 on like the Penn State like 30 or 40 yard line.
It was
Or it
after
was,
Penn State threw a fourth quarter interception,
and
and
then
they
they
get the
got
ball like at the 30, and they call 3 straight run plays.
no, but even before that, because
Oh, okay.
before the interception, because Indiana had the ball on like the 40 yard line, and it was like 4th and 2. And then, because I was in our chat, I was like, Indiana's got to go for it here. And they were down, I think, what, 7, I think? And I was like, they got to go for it here, and then they're gonna get the
They were
touchdown,
down.
and they're
They were down
huh?
3.
They're
They were
down
down
3,
3.
right? Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, you got to go for it here. You got to get the touchdown. But then they punt it to Penn State, and then they down within the 5, and I'm like, well, there you go. There's your chance. Penn State's just going to march on down the field, kill the clock. But then Penn State throws an interception. So somehow I bow down to the expertise that's Indiana's head football coach there. But no,
Yeah.
like that. This is a perfect example of like bad process, right result, right? You're like, that was a horrible idea, but somehow it worked out. Like, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, if you could just force the opponent quarterback to throw an interception, yeah, everything's fine. That's fine. But
Yeah. You got to finish the story. And then what do
yeah,
they do after the interception? They call 3 run plays and go for the
yeah,
field goal to tie the game. And let's just remember, too, just to take another step back, this is the new offensive coordinator because they fired the old one for being inept. And it's just like, why this guy? This guy was so bad at Temple. He was horrible at Temple. He killed a Northern Illinois program that was on a great track after having Jerry Kill and Dave Doran. And this guy just ground that into the ground. And then I don't know. I don't understand head coaches. And of course, afterwards, the explanation was, well, we were being aggressive by going for a field goal because we knew that we had to score again. So it's, I don't know. I really wish I just had math class with every one of these people. I would have gotten A pluses in every freaking class. These people are so dopey.
yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine having class with some of these guys and being like, hey, you know what? Like 7 is bigger than 3, and they're like, no. It's like no, like 7 is better than 3, and
No,
they're like, well, sometimes it's not. I'm like, no, it's always better than
no,
3. Uh,
no. 7 might be bigger, but 3 is more aggressive. And
yes,
that's,
yeah,
All right. Utah, just to confirm, I've been saying for a while their offense is not good. Don't get fooled by what Alex Grinch let them do last week. And here we go. Less than 4 yards of play against Oregon. Oregon's a really good defense, but yeah, if you're getting less than 4 yards of play, your offense stinks.
yeah. And actually, one quick point I'll make there on Oregon. Bo
Yeah.
Nix last week was 30 to 1 to win the Heisman. He's back down to 6 to 1.
Wow.
So
Oh my gosh. So
because I think
that is a
people
big win winning at Houston or at Utah.
a little bit, but I think that the bigger thing is the fact that no one else ahead of him looks good, and people are like, okay, Michael
Yep.
Penix, if he loses a game, then who do we go to? And then like, well, okay, McCord is out now. Drake May is gone. Caleb Williams is gone. Who do you go to? I mean, now that Dylan Gabriel is down as well, I people are like, I guess it's just Bo Nix, right? I guess that's right. Like, there's so few other ones. It's just like I guess it's Bo Nix, right? Because and the thing is, like, yeah, 2 weeks ago they didn't cover against Washington State. That was a backdoor cover by Washington State, but whatever, that's fine. They almost covered the spread, and they still look good against them, so that's fine. But this week, just absolute domination of Utah. Like, we could see Oregon in the college football playoff here. It is not outside the realm of possibility, and I don't understand what the committee is doing or why they ranked. Like, it's funny because we'll talk about our rankings. We'll talk about that with our rankings later. But yeah, Oregon could definitely get back in there. They could definitely be
Oh yeah.
they could definitely be the get the college football playoff.
And they're the opposite of Oregon State, where they've got nice opportunities. I don't even if you knock USC out of the top 25, that will get you noticed. They have a nice opportunity at home against Oregon State. 3 of their last 4, I think, are at home as well, so it sets up well for them. ASU got their first Pac-12 win, and they've been feisty for a while, and they don't even have a real QB. They're going to be a fun team to watch once they get somebody who would not be a starter in the MAC at quarterback. And a reminder, Jaden Rashada actually has redshirted this season, so they could turn it around pretty quickly here. Their bigger problems are supposed to be on defense this season, and their defense has been really, really good. Iowa State tied for first in the Big 12, just like we all had it drawn up, right?
Yep.
That gambling thing really turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I think it rid them of the Decker debacle. That's good. That's alliterative at quarterback, and let this Rocco Beck come in and figure things out. And he's been good now. Clemson is 2-4 in the ACC. They are 2 games behind Boston College, just like we had it drawn up.
Do they play Boston College? Because that would be the funniest thing.
Let me see.
They do not. Aw,
that's unfortunate.
Sad. Maybe in a bowl.
Good news, in a bowl. The good news is that Dabo has figured out the problem. I don't know if you saw this, where in his call-in radio show, some Tyler from Spartanburg, who's like a big star now, was calling him out, and Dabo diagnosed the problem. He said, "Well, the problem is fans like you." So, having his pulse on exactly what the problem is with the team, I have no doubt that they're going to turn this around very shortly.
Yes, clearly it's Tyler. It's Tyler's fault. Tyler is the root of. It's Like, the thing is, like, when they're trying to when they're down there in the red zone trying to kick a field goal for no reason, it's like, damn it, Tyler, this is your fault.
You know what, Tyler?
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, but honestly, like, I don't understand. I don't understand why. Like, I mean, the one thing I will say though is the fact that, I mean, basically the question Tyler asked was like, why are we paying you like 10 or 12 or something $1 million a year to lose? And then he just goes like postal on him. And like, the thing is, I feel like if you're in that position and you're obviously doing this interview, obviously, and you're the head coach, and you're earning that many millions of dollars a year. If that guy with that question gets that under your skin, like that, you just absolutely lose it on this random person, I feel like you deep down know there's a problem. That's like you're saying, okay, yeah, I don't actually know how to fix this. You're like, I am very angry right now, and I'm just gonna let this person have it, rather, because I know there's a problem, right? And I think that's him basically saying, like, I have no idea how to fix this. and I think that's
Yeah,
a bigger indictment even more than the randomly yelling at some fan, um, whose fault it is
yeah.
clearly Tyler.
I
But
know it's
the
frustrating, but you're paid $11 million, and that comes with the territory. I'm going to bring something in here. I don't know if you were a Mad Men fan. I just, that's what the money is for. You're paid
yes,
$11 million, and that's why you're getting $11 million to take crap from people like Tyler and
yeah,
Spartanburg. You got to take the bad with the good, buddy.
yeah, no, and this is the thing, right? I mean, heck, even for us, I mean, for we do this podcast. I get criticized by random people in it all the time, specifically people from the UK. They really do not like me and my projections. And there's been a lot of times that I've been right. I'm just like, I don't care. One, I'm right, and I make money when I bet on UK politics. I actually win money most of the time. So I'm like, yeah, this is. I'm like, yeah, sure. You could say I'm bad at this or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, whatever. I know deep down I'm right, and yeah, sure. Maybe you'll like randomly draw up like, oh, he was wrong in this like mayoral election, which like that wasn't even what that was designed for. But like, whatever, fine. I'll just win money on the next thing, so that's fine. But no, it's like you have to take that. And like, do I go postal on random people on Twitter from the UK? No, but like I could, I don't. But like, it's just it's funny. I mean, I've had people who like they will like randomly tweet stuff, and then like like horrible things too. That like and then basically after the results, like the tweets will be just gone. They'll literally delete the tweets after they were wrong. It's hilarious, but like this is the thing. It's just like you have this comes with the territory, right? You're out there. I mean, we're to a lesser extent. Obviously, we're not as well known as Dabo Sweeney, but like this comes with the territory. You know, sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. You have to take that both ways. But if you're going postal on some random fan, and again, like we're being paid nothing here. People would be like, yeah, sure, whatever. They can like those people can go off on some, but like you're being paid tens of millions of dollars a year. Like there's a level of like, okay, some random person, they're not like you don't get mad at them and go postal on some random fan. So that's that's my take on that.
Yeah, I've made a note here. I need to talk to the LeanTossup executive team. You're making $11 million a year. I need to talk to them about my
Yeah.
compensation. Okay. Western Michigan. A couple weeks ago after they played Mississippi State, I said this offense looks for real. And Eastern Michigan is not great, but 45 points in a conference game is pretty impressive. That's more than, for example, Jacksonville State did against Eastern Michigan. So really interesting because I thought this is a big rebuild, but Lance Taylor's got this turned around pretty quickly on the offensive side of the ball. Might remember Western Michigan was that team that we were goofing on about this time last year because they were going between Jack Sapolek and one of the Bourget guys. There's actually two Bourgets. One is like down the depth chart, like a fullback or something. But Lance Taylor's got that kind of figured out on the offensive side of the ball. Former
Yeah.
Stanford running backs coach. So that's a team to keep an eye on for next year. The other side of that App State game, Southern Miss. Hey, this is so great. I love this. They were scoring 22 points a game before the App State game. They scored 38 at App State. Guess what? Their head coach, Will Hall, who was a former offensive coordinator, he gave up offensive play calling duties for this game. Not a good look. It's a great look that you're mature enough to give up the offensive play callings. Really kind of makes you wonder what on earth they've kind of missed out on by having him strangle the offense for 3 years when all of a sudden they break out for 16 points above their average in a road game.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, here we go. Another update on one of my favorite topics here. Coastal Carolina backup quarterback Jared Guest had an apex at 258 against Marshall that vaunted Marshall pass defense, he said sarcastically, which has dropped from number 1 3 weeks ago to now number 25 in the country. As predicted, they're 0-2 since, and I kind of don't see them maybe winning more than one more game the rest of the way out. Marshall. Remember in our Big 12 preview, sorry to make this kind of a victory laps mini tour here. Before the season, the Big 12 preview, I mentioned how mightily John Reese Plumlee of UCF had struggled against Power 5 teams. He is winless, and he has an apex of 87 against Power 5 teams this season. Not unexpected if you listened to our previews. Tune in, July of next year just to get all the good information, such as that. Um, we have another team. I need to kind of make this just a little mini part of this segment here in honor of Halloween yesterday. I'm pronouncing ULM dead. They lost by 10 to Arkansas State, who's shown a little bit of a revival here, but is still bad. ULM is just directionless. They gotta make a change at coach. And we haven't really officially pronounced Michigan State dead, but they have to be now. I mean, it's really going nowhere, and it's I don't know. It's not like they have a decision to make, but geez, it just the market's been so slow to catch up on to just like how bad it is there.
Yeah, Michigan State has not won a game since they fired their head coach for good reason. For the scandal there, yeah, it's just 2-6 now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's. I mean, now to be, and the thing is, even then, now, obviously, um, the problem wasn't necessarily like people are gonna be like, oh, it's because they fired Mel Tucker. It's like, well, no, their two wins were against a MAC team and an FCS team, so this could have been coming anyways. Now, it hasn't been worsened by this, yes, but is it like discernibly like that much worse than this could have been? No, I mean, like even then, okay, you lose to Iowa by 10, you lose to Rutgers by 3, and then you lose to Minnesota by 15. I feel like the loss to 15 is worse. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and like maybe you could have turned one or two of those around, but like 41-7 to Washington, 31-9 to Maryland, 49-0 to Michigan. Like, yeah, it's. I mean, the thing is they have to do this anyways, but like it's like yeah, this is this is a team that needs to rebuild, and I think they'll have the chance to do that uh,
Yeah.
in the off season and for the next couple of years. It's interesting though, like when you look at it now, it's not obviously the same situation, but Michigan State and Northwestern are kind of in similar situations. They're actually literally both Big Ten teams. Both fired their head coaches for non-football related reasons, scandals. Now, to be fair, Michigan went 2 games into the season before they fired. So Northwestern fired earlier, so they had a little bit of runway. But Northwestern's 4-4, and Michigan is 2-6. Michigan State is 2-6, right? So even then, there is a huge discrepancy there, and I mean, Michigan State should be a far better team than that. It's really questionable as to how this has gotten this bad this fast. So it's interesting that you have two teams that have fired their head coaches and they're on two very different trajectories.
Yeah, I'm really not usually a fan of this move, but I think that Northwestern has to make that guy the permanent head coach. I'll put it this way: I don't know how many coaches in the country would have them at 4-4 right now. Now maybe they've had a little bit of luck, but you know, who would have them better than 4-4 at this point of this season right now? I can't. I mean, even if they didn't have any of the drama with Fitzgerald getting fired and all that stupid stuff that went around it, Northwestern wasn't going to win more than 3 games this season, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to keep him. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think it's a very like, and it is a weird situation all the time when you obviously have a coach come in and do that stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, but we have like you're at a point where it's like, well, we have the like we were projected to be really bad, and it's kind of similar to Georgia Tech last year, right? Their head coach comes in, and to be fair, I mean, if you had asked most people if Georgia Tech right now would say after this year they'd be 4-4 with wins against Miami and North Carolina, by the way, I think they'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll take that, right? And I think 4-4
Mm-hmm.
again, like it's Georgia Tech, not a powerhouse, right? I mean, 4-4 is far better than they were last year, right? So I think in many ways, I think they'd say, yeah, we'll take that. I think, although in some cases, generally people don't want to, schools don't want to do that. They don't want to keep the interim as their head coach. I think, I think in some cases, I mean, the last case it worked out. I think for Northwestern, especially for a smaller school like this, if you've got a guy that's even remotely competent, I think it's better than trying to like, I mean, from us, we kind of have a good idea as to who's good and who's not good. But if you're an athletic director and you don't follow this stuff as closely as us, you're just going to cast a wide net, interview like 8 different people, and you could potentially pick the bad one in there, right? Like it,
Well, potentially. I mean, it's going to happen. Yeah.
probably most of the time, right? Because like
Yes. Yes.
I think in some cases you shouldn't even like obviously you think you know who you think should be the next defensive coordinator for USC, and that'd be a great pick actually. I think he'd be great at USC, he'd be good at Florida or any other school to be honest. He'd be really good, but the problem is they're not when the athletic director makes that decision, they're not going to draw up like an analytics thing of like, okay, we're going to hire this guy. Like they're going to interview people and they're going to do it that way, right?
Yeah.
And I think there is when you do stuff like that, there is a non-zero chance that you screw it up because someone could be, oh, that guy had a really good interview, we'll hire him, and then that screws up your program for 4 years, right? So I think
Yeah.
if you have someone who's already not bad, especially if you're Northwestern or Georgia Tech, then just stick with that guy. Like you don't need
Yep.
to throw that out. Like he seems to be fine. Stick with it. It's fine. Just go with that guy.
And we'll end part one on this. The reason that works out, and it applies to both, my complaint about what Georgia Tech did was actually worked in their favor. I was screaming about you could have had Willie Fritz, but you didn't hire him because you're not serious about football. But because they're not serious about football, they got the right guy. And I think Northwestern, if they realize we're not serious about football, this is good enough, they could probably avoid screwing it up. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. And that is the thing, right? It's like, are you a serious football school or not? I mean, like obviously USC, Florida, Oregon, yeah, we're serious about football. But if you're Georgia Tech or you're Northwestern, like I mean, I think if you're in the Big Ten and you're getting whatever tens of millions of dollars a year for free functionally from the Big Ten
Mm-hmm.
media contract, and you're like, you know what, we're fine with going to a bowl every 2 out of 3 years. Maybe 1 year we don't go to a bowl because of bad recruitment or something. We're still getting a massive paycheck at the end of the year anyway. Yeah, that's kind of fine. Like
Yeah.
maybe every once in a while we have a good year, and maybe you know what, maybe we can even improve some things, get in a couple better recruits, and we can put a guy in a position to succeed. But like maybe you're happy with you having a really good upset every year or two. Maybe every other year you upset an Oregon or a Michigan or something, right? And then you're like, that's great, good. But and then every other year you don't make a bowl, and you're like, well, that kind of sucks. But we're still getting paid $100 million anyway, so you
Yep.
might just be okay with just getting that one upset every couple of years, and then just collecting your giant Big Ten
Exactly.
check, and then you're good, right? So
Just take the check and don't argue with it.
yeah,
That works for a lot of people,
yeah.
including a lot of my former employers. So, with that, that ends part one. We will see you all in part two.
Yep.